Hello, this is Brian from the Bad Manners Podcast. This should be a quick video. This one's from Whatever Podcast, and it's titled, Does Body Count Matter? I have some thoughts on this, so let's get into it.
Just because my body count is high and my sex drive is high does not mean that I can't be in a committed relationship.
The key thing to understand this is it's essentially a version of game theory. If you look at this person who has this high body count and who is indicated with her reference to a high sex drive, that this is a focal point for her psychology and where she directs her energy, then her behaviors are going to coalesce around that is important, and she's going to engineer her efforts to make that an outcome. So instead of engaging in literally any other set of activities that would be conducive towards developing her as a person, or perhaps developing characteristics that would be helpful in having a serious committed relationship, she purposely pursues a course of action where the only possible outcome is her personality and psychology will continue to amass ever greater numbers of bodies. People's personalities do not exist in a vacuum. Your character traits are the result of established behavioral patterns. She is not going to be able to just turn this off and on and switch into being an entirely different person. Because a woman meant for a serious, successful, committed relationship has certain characteristics. And by characteristics, I mean virtues, values, morals, ethics, behavioral patterns that are completely alien to what this lady has done up to this point in her life. Essentially, her very foundation for being viable for a relationship is non-existent. So this entire process of gaining a high body count and prioritizing her sex drive disqualifies her from being relationship material. But let's continue.
My thing is we can make inferences based on data, and all of the data says that when women are virgins on their wedding night, that is the highest chance they have at a happy, successful marriage.
Usually when you see this topic come up, people usually appeal to the data, more specifically the data point that the more partners that a female has, the less likely it is they're going to be able to successfully pair bond. And obviously the data has important value. It does indicate a sort of deterministic reality that occurs as a consequence of these behaviors. So you have the biological determinism angle, and what I just spoke about previously, that's more the metaphysics argument that's to be made. That these people, by accumulating a value set, or not accumulating, by having an epistemology that leads them to values, that believes these behaviors are correct or appropriate, it makes them unable to pair bond in and of themselves. So even if they might come to believe that they love a person and want to commit to them, their established value system and behaviors is not going to make them able to sustain that relationship because they have not cultivated the practices that are necessary to actually maintain it, even if they wanted to. So when both the simple physics or, biological reality and the underlying metaphysics that motivate the decisions these women are making, when both of them disqualify them for being relationship material, it doesn't matter what arguments they attempt to make against this reality. The kind of woman that you're going to need to be able to have a successful relationship that hopefully leads to a successful, healthy family with offspring who are going to be successful is not anything in common with a woman that has a high body count. The entire epistemology motivating each type of person is fundamentally different, and therefore they are meant for different outcomes. You do not just get to pick and choose your outcomes at will, because you're inevitably going to have established patterns of behavior resurface within your attempts to establish a relationship. This is why people need to get it right early, preferably by, of course, being raised in a healthy, nurturing household with good values. Because if you do not, the more time that passes, the more time you're engaged in behaviors such as allocating your times to such a degree that you are making it possible to have these relations with people. That time adds up, and eventually what you become a personal master of is collecting more bodies. That mastery, which could have been applied to literally anything else more conducive to a relationship, is not one that is useful to any partner on earth. Other than, I suppose, hypothetically, some man that thinks that that experience from bedroom activity is more important than the many, many other attributes that a wife and mother is supposed to have.
That's all they've ever had. They don't know no better.
So why do you need to know?
See, this argument about them wanting to know whether there's something better, it's because their foundation for what they understand is good in life places its focus upon bedroom relations, which means that their priorities in life are not necessarily dedicated to things like fidelity, skill acquisition that's useful to a potential partner, activities that shape your character in a way that would make you more resilient to life's struggles. Instead, they seek to know better in the one area that they think is actually important to human relations, when it's a relatively minor part of it. Never mind the fact that, science makes it clear that they won't be able to pair bond as effectively. But once they know better, knowing better does not mean that that is going to be the partner you settle down with. In fact, we see this phenomena quite frequently where you have women that get with men that are of high status, and those men blow their mind, and then that relationship doesn't work, or maybe the man didn't intend it to be a relationship in the first place, and then this woman who supposedly knows better is going to have to go settle for something that's going to be a perpetual disappointment. This is not an enviable outcome at all.
Better. Most of the time, if you get better, like if you slept with 50 dudes, there's no way you're going to keep the best guy out of the 50.
Why are we debasing the human complex experience to data and statistics?
Okay,
it's funny. So she just made the argument that they're just debasing it to data and statistics. But as I already indicated, you can argue it on metaphysical grounds effectively too. Any human being who allocates significant amounts of time and energy to cultivating this specific outcome, collecting bodies as it were, is going to be far less useful to any potential partner than one that had spent the time on anything more constructive. That's not even a scientific data point. The hard reality is they'll be yet less useful, so that's a practical physical consequence. Their skill set is going to be impaired to compared to what it could have been, because they chose to do that instead of something else. That's an opportunity cost, and they apparently believe that that opportunity cost was worth it because they elected to collect those bodies. But again, it's going to cultivate behavioral patterns because people's psychology and behavior are inevitably intertwined. And those behavioral patterns are going to haunt her in relationships because she didn't develop other relationship skills with the time she was spending on stacking bodies.
I can take it anecdotally where, the girl that's on fans is saying she's on antidepressants. Like, there's more problems when you sleep with more people. And I think,
why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
And I think ignoring this is just delusional.
Why do you think that is then? Why do you think this is?
Because I don't think women are meant to sleep around like that.
Why?
I think
we have needs.
Again, notice that she's like, we have needs. When a person has made that a focal point of their existence, it becomes a need. And when she communicates that it's a need, it is assumed psychological priority. This is not a person that has firmly established themselves to such a degree that they have inner peace without that specific outcome. So they need to collect those bodies because that's what brings them some degree of happiness and comfort in their life. This sets up any potential man that gets with them to where the moment that that need is not being met, they are going to become a liability to that man. So anytime you run into somebody that they make it a clear point that this is an extreme focus and very, very important to them, They are sending you a very clear signal that they are a potential liability in the event that they perceive you are not meeting that need the way they envision it should be met. This is why you need healthy, well-adjusted individuals of strong values where they are internally strong and not dependent on external stimulation in order to meet their spiritual needs or even physical needs, as it were.
Do we not have needs? And just as much as men we want, like,
Are women?
What an absolutely base understanding of humanity. We are not supposed to be animals that simply follow our most base impulse. If we did that, we'd all still be in the hunter-gatherer stage and doing whatever behaviors accompanies that. You should be able to control your impulses such that they are not the master of you. You are supposed to be the master of that. That's not to say it's not something important, but it's only supposed to be one part of the human experience, something that you can do with a partner while you pursue doing other constructive things in life. It shouldn't be the focal point of everything you do.
Sure, yes, but that doesn't mean we're meant to be sleeping with a whole bunch of dudes.
But
And
men are.
And I think,
The false equivalency that women tend to cast upon men, that men are somehow meant to do it, it's not a desirable practice to cultivate in either sex. On the scientific data front, yes, it appears that men are more resilient when it comes to losing their ability to pair bond as a result of too many bodies. That does not change any of the underlying metaphysical issues related to them having that opportunity cost associated with pursuing that outcome, which therefore would make them hypothetically a worse partner compared to what they would have been if they had cultivated other skill sets or, rounded out other aspects of their character. And then, of course, you have the personality characteristics that are developed in accordance with those expressed behaviors. So whether it's the physical reality or the metaphysical reality, it's not desirable for either sex. The real problem is, I believe a lot of men actually understand this to some extent, but it is clear that women have fashioned this understanding of reality that they believe is a reflection of men in an attempt to just be libertines.
I think what can attest to this is the one who waited till she was married is the one that's married here and seems to be in a happy, healthy relationship.
Could that be, though?
That is
because the majority of virgins on their wedding day are religious. That is a religious thing.
That's about the first time one of them has come around to a valid point. Yeah, it stems from a religious thing, and religion is often the place from which people draw values. And those values are ones that we know tend to propagate a species because they, despite scientific advancement, those values allowed the species to continue passing on their genes through certain sets of people because those values were successful. So, even with science, the values inherited from certain religious practices have direct benefit to those people that maintain them. So, yes, if they're religious, their values would lead them to chastity, but this is a superior outcome for human well-being and happiness. If it was not, then you would not have seen that people continue perpetuating, and in the case of the West, also building very successful civilizations on top of it. As they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the eating for Western civilization, as it's been derived from Christian values, has been very good. As they become increasingly unmoored from that, it has not led to increasingly happy outcomes for men or women.
And in the Bible, it says that you were supposed to be with that one person for the rest of your life. Yeah. So could that be because that is a religious thing?
I think religion is great. I think religion...
So, just to wrap this one up, if you are a man in this current time, one of the issues you are inevitably going to run up against is the number of good women in Western countries is extraordinarily low. I've mentioned in other videos, there's a statistics I saw recently indicating 78% of young women are liberal. Well, if they've absorbed any of the ideologies generally associated with leftism, they are going to be generally promiscuous in their behaviors, and they're going to do it with their sense of moral validation because they believe what they're doing is correct and best for them. Because that's the value system that's been instilled in them. It doesn't matter that that set of values is dysfunctional and likely to lead to negative outcomes. They are a reflection of their environment. Unfortunately, if you're a man, this starts to leave some men to look out of the country. That's going to lead to its own set of problems. Then you might have values that are misaligned, even if you find one you think is good. Cultural clash will always be an issue to one degree or another. You can't be entirely sure that they're not just, with you because it's a step up financially in their life. You can always end up discovering to your horror that they become westernized women themselves. So the sad truth, the modern dating game for men is structured in such a way that it's hard to find a good one. Let's say 22% of them are good. Some of them might have absorbed some of the characteristics from leftism because, again, institutional capture has made them absorb these ideologies, which makes the pool of potential mates even smaller. So men are in a hard-pressed place when it comes to meeting the desire to have a family and children, because you are very much gambling on whether or not the woman you are giving your time to even qualifies as mate material. Sure, due to their willingness to have high body counts, they might be bedroom material, but these are not wives. These are not mothers of children. So I don't know what this portends for the future of Western civilization, but yes, body count does matter, and it matters a great deal because it gives you a lot of information about that person's psychology, values, and skill set. Other than that, make sure you give support to the Whatever podcast. Other than that, if you liked anything I had to say, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't, I'll argue with you in the comments. Have a good night.